yeah, hi guys. So today we are going to start from the approaches of public administration. What all approaches we basically have, or what all approaches actually help in the public administration discipline to study further. So first of all, we talk about the philosophical approach. As it's the name suggests, philosophical. It is the one of the oldest and the traditional approach that has been used. What philosophical approach has is enunciates the ideals under the administrative activities. Whatever administrative activities have been in the organization, whatever they are doing, the ideals they follow up. There are some of the ideals that has been followed up in an organization, that the hierarchy that we have. Whose mic is on? Make sure you do not interrupt. Rationalize of human behavior. It also lead us to what, when we study under the philosophical approach, it tells us the human behavior rationalizations, the facts, the logics, and how a human behavior is actually rationalized. We study under this the classification and analysis of the values we pursue, and it is the most comprehensive approach in public administration that we study. It is mostly found under the Plato's Republic, if anybody have ever gone through that, and Shanti Power's Mahabharata. Okay, so next approach is legal approach. In legal approach, again, we know with the name suggests, is related to what, judiciary juristic approach that emphasizes on the legalistic concerns and processes that we go through. Lizvina, can you move to the next slide? Yeah. Emphasized legalistic concerns and processes, nurtured and exemplified in public law traditions of European countries. Basically, legal approach was used mostly in the European countries to study the public laws of European countries. US's Frank J. Goodnow is the main advocate, and he is also known as the father of American public administration. The father of public administration is Woodrow Wilson, but if somebody asks you father of public administration, American public administration, then it's Frank J. Goodnow. Sorry, I have written something wrong. Like FRANK. There will be K also, and then J. Goodnow. Next is managerial approach. Again, if you remember in the last lecture, we have talked about the managerial view in the nature. So managerial view, what it talks about, the management, how in an organization managers are working. Basically, managers are on the upper hierarchy, the higher level of organization, or the main who are actually managing the whole staff and the institution. They are purely technical and non-political. They what they look for, getting things done, that how we can achieve our objectives on time and on with effectiveness. So this is the managerial approach, and it is related to the scientific management movement given by Taylor Swift. Oh, sorry, shit, sorry, given by F.W. Taylor, and thus also known as mechanistic approach. Scientific management. In scientific management, what they're talking is how management is working in a manner of science. Okay, from time and motion, from work and time, how this is all affecting in an organization. Like four laborers are working and four humans are working. So how they are working, their work and time differences and all, how that goes on, it talks about all that. Then the next is behavioral approach. Behavioral approach again talks about the human behaviors, how human behaviors work in an organization, how a human behavior actually affects the organization. Like somebody, we usually say even that if some of our teacher is not behaving properly or being so rude, we say sometimes that okay, maybe he had some fight at his home, maybe he had a bad day at his home, so that's why he is just being rude to us and being annoying with us. He is just, that's a butterfly effect like of thing. Okay, he had a fight at home, but he shouted on somebody in the classroom on a student that has nothing to do with that. So that's like behavioral approach. So how a behavior of human actually affects the organization. inquires into the role of official and unofficial organizations. Simon decision making process and Charles Lindblom are the main advocates of this. Then next we have uh, systems approach. Systems approach has been borrowed from engineering in 1960s, a system of interrelated and interdependent parts and forces. Like system is like a steps has to be followed. The process from the input to the output and then the feedback thing. Many of you might have studied that input output theory. It's related, it's similar to systems approach only. So what all things and what inputs are put, and then a black box come, the process happens, and then a outcome, the final results come to the to the clients, to the consumers, and then they give the feedback, okay, what they liked and what they didn't like, what are the consequences. Then again to reform that, we go again to the inputs, we put some new inputs, then the process happens in the black box, and then the output comes. So a systems approach is like this, and in that formal structure and behavior works. Then next is the political approach. Political approach is an integral part of the political process. What all political process happens in a country, in a state, or in an organization sometimes. Paul Appleby, John Gauss, Wallace Sire rejects traditional dichotomy. What was traditional dichotomy? It was the dichotomy, uh, bifurcation of politics from the administration, that politics and administration are two different things. Important role played in public policy. Political approach, obviously it has an important role in public policy. How? Because it has given a different dimension to public administration. It has given it a new identity, a new discipline. It has given him an independent identity to pursue further than just being a part of the political processes developed from an analysis of apparent reality. That has all happened, that we have already studied in the last lecture. The next is economic approach. What economic approach is? What is basically, if we say in a single line, what economics is what we say economics. There are a lot of students from economics. Can anybody tell me in a single line, if somebody asks you what is economics, what you will say to them? Anybody? Okay,
The
all.
overview of a like economy can be specified as an overview of a country or state and the uh, monetary situations of that state, monetary fiscal situations.
You are talking about economy. I'm asking economics. There is a difference. Economics is what? Economics is the use of scarce resources in an optimum level, that we actually utilize to the optimum level of those resources in a well effective manner, and they are not wasted, because we have scarce resources and we have 10 desires, but we can just accomplish 2 to 3 desires from those scarce resources. So how and for which 3 desires or goals are actually useful and actually will give us the optimum level of utilization, so we use in that way, that is called economics. So we have that economic approach, rationalizing scarce resources to gain maximum. The next is case method approach. It was developed in USA in 1930s, deals with detailed account of specific events. Case is narrative of events that constitute a decision of an administrator. Case study method. Okay, it's like a case is given, a narrative has been told to you, and then you study that, and then you analyze, you collect data, and then after analyzing, after collecting data, listening to that narrative, you come to a decision. So that is case study method. Other two methods are normative and empirical. Sorry, I missed this one. Historical approach. Historical approach is tracing developments of public administration in a chronological order. Wilson prescribed one of the two best suited methods as historical and the comparative method. Historical method, what historical method talks about, it's just tracing the all the developments or the past experiences, the past happened, that has been happened, and that too in a chronological order. Ki, okay, from where we have started the public administration as a subject, and how the public administration word came, who first has actually described it, then who asked it to become a different discipline, then actually whose essay has led us to have it as a independent discipline in today's world, then how after public administration we get into the public policy as a new discipline under that. So that all chronology, how this all happened. So Woodrow Wilson has prescribed one of the two best suited methods and approaches, as one is historical approach and second is comparative approach. Next, the other two approaches are normative and empirical. If you know, like normative, we understand from the name itself the norms, that the norms and values we follow up, and the empirical is the facts that actually we have proved, and actually it's scientifically proven. Ki, okay, we have facts, key proven facts that goes on with us. So next slide. We all know public administration is as old as civilized life. Like administration as a subject, as a discipline, we have started today studying, or from the last 100 years we have got this discipline. But administration has always been there. If whatever we are doing in an organizing manner, that is administration. But as a field of study, it's a recent origin. Like there are some examples of public administration that has been in the past, and that we started studying it here now, but in the past also we had that administrative things. Like in Ramayana and Mahabharata, if you see the Kautilya's Arthashastra, he has talked about how a king has to behave and what things he has to keep with him, what all type of corruptions are there, what a king has to do, what his ministers are supposed to do. So that has already been there in Arthashastra. Then teachings of Confucius has also talked about it. Aristotle's politics, he talked about the government. He talked about how a government should work and how the people of the state should behave, how a people, like theory of family and everything he has talked. Then in the Renaissance era, Machiavelli, he also talked about the administration in his book The Prince. The term public administration used for the first time in closing year century when Hamilton contributed a paper defining the meaning and scope of public administration. So the term as public administration has been used by the Hamilton for the first time when he used in the paper defining meaning and scope. And the first book on public administration was Principle Deep Administration Public by a French scholar, Charles Jean Bonnin, in 1812. However, the discipline cannot assume the status of an independent discipline. He has talked about, he has written a book about public administration. He talked about public administration, but still he cannot assume. And even we have talked in the last lecture, we didn't talk about this person at all. We didn't talk about the 1812. We came directly from the 1887 Wilson's essay when he talked about political administration dichotomy. So he has not much reference here. But when we are talking about the evolution, we'll go back to the Vedas. We'll talk from the initial historical contributions, who all has actually contributed. Next slide. Public administration as an independent discipline and separate subject has emerged after the Woodrow Wilson's essay on the study of administration in Political Science Quarterly. Public administration, this we have talked already. Then Robert Glombiski discussed locus and focus and outlined four phases of the evolution. And Robert Glombiski, while talking and while discussing about the public administration, he gave this term locus and focus, where and what. Ki, okay, from where we have actually got this thing ki, okay, public administration has to be a different discipline, and what we are actually focusing in public administration, that what all things we need in a public administration. So he outlined the evolution into four phases. The first is the analytical distinction between public administration. The analytical distinction is the political administration dichotomy that we had. He talked about that. Then in second phase he's saying the concrete distinction of politics from administration. Okay, we have actually bifurcated them. There is no line between, there is no interconnection between them, but that has not been possible. Then he talks in the third stage, he says a science of management has come after the analytical distinction of public administration, and then we have bifurcated, we have divided politics and administration differently as different subjects, as different arenas of work. Then he is talking the next stage has come as the science of management, how the public administration works, how the science is involved in the management. In the fourth stage, he says the pervasive orientation towards the public policy, how we have moved from public administration to now as to more focusing on public policies. Instead of administrations, we are more focused towards policies today. Next slide. However, the logical sense studies under as that four stages were given by Robert Glombiski, but actually we study the evolution of public administration in these five stages. First, as the political administration dichotomy 1887 to 1926, when Woodrow Wilson has talked about the when Woodrow Wilson has talked in his essay about the political administration dichotomy as the basic theme as separation of politics from the administration. He laid the foundation for separate and independent identity of public administration. He has he has described public administration as field of business and believed it as a science. The basic argument, it is getting harder to what he says, it is getting harder to run a constitution than to frame one. Like framing a constitution and to run a constitution, both are different, and but in different also, what is more difficult, like planning a timetable. We plan a timetable, we put it on our wall, and that's done. But when it comes to follow up, we fails. Every time we fail. So writing a constitution and framing a constitution is easy than to run that constitution and to manage that whole state. Hence there should be science that shall seek. So what he's saying, there should be a science that seeks straighten parts of the government, make it business. Administration is like a business and it's like management, so it has to be a different thing than the politics. The Wilson lines were further continued by the Frank J. Goodnow in his book Politics and Administration. Then in the next stage, the principles of administration. So principles of administration was the time when I'm so sorry. Principles of administration was the time when there were principles introduced in the administration. Okay, what are the values and what are the things that has to be necessary in an administration to function at this best level, how to achieve the efficiency and effectiveness to the best level in an organization. Then that was the time when we have got post corp, the planning, organization, staffing, directing, coordinating, budgeting and all. Administration is administration irrespective of nature and context of work. Administration will be administration, obviously. If we work in a government organization or in a private organization, even sometimes we have that at our home, in hospital, in NGO, in children, we just try to put that organized frame of things to work upon. Then the next, no, Lizvina, go back. we are still on the third stage, criticism and challenges. So there was the time when public administration as a separate discipline has been started to be criticized, and the identity of the public administration has been challenged. How? Like criticism, it has been criticized. Wait, yeah. The main theme of advocacy of human relations behavioral approach, both the defining pillars of public administration, was challenged. The administration politics administration dichotomy was rejected. The principles of administration were challenged and criticized on the lack of scientific validity of universal relevancy. Because public administration mostly has human and behavioral sciences, and we all know that science can be universal, but human behaviors can never be universal. Even if you see in yourself, on some day you like something, but the other day you do not like that. You just change your choices. The days when you were child, you didn't like some things, but now you like all those things. So human behavior is natural. It just develop with the surrounding, with the habits, with the preferences. Every time preferences change. So that has been the fact when the principles of administration were given, and then in 1927 to 37, but after 1937 they have been criticized and challenged because they lack the universal validity. And the politics administration dichotomy that has been given in the 1887 to 1926, that has been criticized again in 1938, because politics and administration can never be have different boundaries. They are interlinked. Then next, fourth stage, crisis of identity. When the public administration was challenged and criticized in the third stage, then obviously the crisis for identity has been arisen in the stage 4, when public administration as a separate discipline was not able to stand. The politics administration dichotomy was challenged, rejected, and then the principles of administration was rejected, because the principles of administration was like post corp that I said earlier. We can never follow up much in the we can I'm so sorry, wait. Yeah, so during that time, post was like challenged and criticized on the thing ki this hierarchy or these principles cannot be followed up in every organization. Unlike that has been said ki these seven these seven acronyms has to be followed one by one in an organization and has to be there, but there are some organizations which are not able to have those seven, but can have only three, can have only four. So that time it has been criticized for that. Then that was the time when new public administration has arisen and was taking as a new identity, public choice approach, ecological approach, comparative public administration. All those disciplines were coming. So the traditional public administration was not able to stand, was not able to take its base. Then in the stage 4, what we public administration as an independent discipline. Sorry, again there is a mistake by me. It's 1990 onwards. And it was the time when public policy has arisen as a discipline under the public administration. Main theme was public policy, its analysis, its implementation and evaluation, the achievement of goals and objectives. Basic focus from the efficiency and effectiveness of an organization has been shifted to the achievement of the goals, achievement of the objectives on time, and how a government is actually able to satisfy the clients or satisfy the citizens of the state. Next, so from now Lisbina will continue.
Hi, so I will start with the new public administration. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, I'll start. In the 1960s and early 1970s were a period of turbulence and instability, confusion in the West, particularly in the United States. Like other social sciences such as psychology, sociology, and political science, public administration was shaken by this revolutionary period. And the book Towards a New Public Administration, the Minow Brook Perspective, edited by Frank Marini and published in 1971, and Public Administration in a Time of Turbulence, edited by Dwight Waldo, gave currency to the concept of new public administration. So these young scholars, they all came up, went to a place for a conference, and then they came up with the term new public administration, where and this described a new trend in the field of public administration. Okay, so here are the anti-goals of new public administration. Anti-positivism. It makes public administration more flexible and receptive and problem solving. The second one is anti-technical. It respects emotive, creative humans and they don't treat them like machines. And anti-hierarchical, which is like as Garima mentioned earlier, the POSCOP technique, where everything was in a hierarchy, that this has to happen after that. So in new public administration, they don't consider it as a hierarchy. Moving on to the goals. First is relevance. The advocates of the new public administration movement pointed out that the traditional discipline had little to say about contemporary problems and emerging issues of the post-industrial society, and therefore it was irrelevant. And new public administration should deal with contemporary problems such as urbanism, slums, environmental pollution, violence, labor union riots, and problems of technology. The second is value. The champions of the new movement advocate openness about the value being served through administrative action. The movement stated that new public administration should be less generic and more public, less descriptive and more prescriptive, less institution oriented and more client impact oriented, less neutral and more normative. The third one is social equity. New public administration advocates state that the purpose of public action should be reduction of economic and social disparities and the enhancement of life opportunities for all social groups inside the organization. Change. The new public administration is of the concern that public administration should become active agents of social change. To serve the cause of social equity is to actively work for social change. This is the motto of new public administration. Client focus. New public administration focuses on client-focused administration. It emphasizes the need for administration to be sufficiently interested in meeting human needs for those who receive government service and services or goods. They stress that administrators should be active in sensing public needs and responding to them. So to conclude, the new public administration has enlarged the perspective of public administration by linking it to society and societal problems. It emphasizes on innovation and change, which is why it's dynamic. And it was able to bring about great change in the old way of thinking about public administration. Do you all have any questions from this new public administration? Do you all have any questions? Can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can
can
hear
hear
you.
you.
Okay, I'll move on. The next is development administration. Public administration is considered an important mechanism in development process. Government uses its administrative authority to achieve national development tasks by formulating, organizing, and implementing large-scale action programs. To handle these complex activities of the government, instrument of development administration is employed. Development administration is concerned with increasing and improving the capabilities of administrative system. So development administration is a process of executing developmental programs and projects in the direction of nation building and socio-economic progress through public administration. Next is the factors of development administration. So after the Second World War, most of the countries in Asia and Africa gained independence from colonial rule, which is why the newly independent states faced many problems like poverty, malnutrition, starvation, lack of housing, and there were burning problems for these cities, which is why the international agencies and US economy helped assisting these developing countries to come up. Next, the features. The first one is action and goal orientation. This means that it is related, that development administration is related to achieving certain results. Developing countries need to address socio-economic problems, and this is exactly why development goals are set, and development administration takes action towards these goals. Socio-economic change. This is development administration is change oriented. Your change means socio-economic change of underdeveloped and developing countries. Client orientation. The need for client means the need of the client means the need of the citizen. It is concerned with upliftment of the poorer section of the society. Commitment orientation. Development administration is committed to its goals and responsibilities. It has high morale and motivation in working conditions to achieve developmental goals. Time orientation. The development administration has to perform all its developmental tasks within a certain period of time. Ecological orientation. It is an open system and it is continuously influenced by every social, political, economic, environmental, and vice versa. Participation oriented. Development administration adopts the policy of administrative, collaborative, and participatory system for its purpose. The active participation of people in the formulation and implementation of development policies is given priority. Responsiveness. Developmental administration is responsive in terms of its service. The more responsive it is, the more development exceeds. Innovativeness. Development administration is innovative as it relates to social change in achieving developmental objectives. The challenges. The The inadequate concern with people-driven development in any country, people live in different communities. In such a situation, no general policy can be brought in. So this is one of the challenge. Second is bureaucratic domination in development. Bureaucratic power goes hand in hand with political power. In the case of development projects, in such organizations, there are often allegations of nepotism. Therefore, the general public has doubts about the importance of this institution in the overall development of the state. Political capabilities and politicization of development. Because of weakness of political parties and interest groups, the correct problem is not represented. Its effect can be seen in the policy. Low priority for quality assurance, monitoring, and evaluation. The policy is formulated in the interest of socio-economic development, but there is a lack of proper assurance about its outcome. Administrative corruption. This is the biggest challenge for development administration. Corruption at the administrative level is often seen in developing countries. Excessive political control and nepotism in administration. In almost every developing countries, politically influential people abuse their political power to influence the administration. Political parties also in many cases appoint people of their choice in the administration. Okay, can you give me an example what is happening now, like what happened now in Gujarat? If you all ever heard about it, like in the news, it was all over.
At what time period?
Now, like recently, in the recent days, like 2-3 weeks ago, like this, it's still happening actually. Regarding the CM, have you all heard? So the Gujarat, I will continue. So the Gujarat CM had resigned. So, and there was no excuse given, like there was nothing. What happened? Why did he resign all of a sudden? And this has happened with BJP's 5 ministers, chief ministers, one of which is in Karnataka. The Karnataka chief minister recently resigned and another person came in his place. And the same thing happened in Gujarat. And there's no scandal over here, but political parties are like, over here, BJP is taking an initiative because it can change any person at any point of time. We as people don't know what is happening. Like there's no scandal which has come up saying, oh, he did that, which is why he had to resign. So the political parties are covering it up very easily. So have you all heard about it or no?
Yeah, I have heard about it. That I guess there is also one more chief minister who recently resigned as well. So it was in the Hindu editorial page where they collectively assume that it is happening because of their lack of health assistance during the COVID second wave, and due to the lack of accountability, like they have pinned all of the blame on them and they are using them as a scapegoat. Like this is one of those analyses put forth in that paper.
Yeah, I think I read the same thing. Because the same thing is put, but like everywhere you can't blame the chief minister only, right? Like there are, like as you studying public administration, there are levels, and like to blame everything on one person is not very fair. Okay, so the conclusion: development administration has played a very important role for the socio-economic development of developing countries and underdeveloped countries. Development administration in the 21st century is therefore not only administration of the developing countries, but also the developed countries. Okay, now Garima will take over.
So yeah, comparative public administration. As the word itself suggests, comparative. So we are going to compare public administration. Now, how to compare public administration? What exactly we are talking about here is the two states or two or more states comparisons of public administration, like how the comparative I'm so sorry how the public administration works in the underdeveloped countries and how the public administration functions in the developed countries. The differences between the developed and the developing countries. Basically, we talk about these. And this has been a recent origin under the public administration as a discipline or the subfield only after the independence of the Commonwealth countries and only after the Latin America and the African countries when started getting independent. So, comparative public administration is the study of two or more public administration systems and then drawing parallels from them. The comparative administrative group has expanded the definition of comparative public administration to include the practice and the theory of the subject. So, what is comparative administration group? It has been a group formed in the USA under the Committee of the American Society for Public Administration, the ASPA, founded in 1939. Comparative Administration Group has been formed under the ASPA, the American Society of Public Administration, and the Comparative Administration Group has been formed in the 1960s. Comparative public administration, how it is exactly different from the American public administration, or can say traditional public administration, is like the traditional public administration is talking about the one thing or the one orientation, while the comparative public administration is culturally cross culture. It talks about the different cultures followed in the developed and the developing countries. It's about the practice and the practical views after seeing the practical orientations of any policies working in USA, and then the same policy followed in India, how the actually it has the effects and how it actually functions and get to the goals and achievements. It is also considered as a movement that seeks to transform the idea of public administration from idealist to empirical in pragmatics. कि ideal से हम facts की तरफ जा रहे हैं, norm से हम facts और rational हो रहे हैं and pragmatic हो रहे हैं. Next slide. Evolution of comparative public administration, कि how comparative public administration has been evolved, as I have already discussed it. After the after the independence of the Latin American and African countries, when they have started around the Second World War, especially in the 1950s only. And the view of comparative governance has encouraged the interpretation and analysis of comparative public administration. Ki how comparative governance, first of all, we compare the governance, the political structure, the political processes, because after that only we can go to the administration. So, from the view of comparative governance, has encouraged the interpretation and analysis of comparative public administration. Next, different processes of comparative public administration. Processes of compare from no, there are three processes that we actually follow up to study comparative public administration. First is normative to empirical. Normative, again we have talked in the approaches, the norms and the values we follow up, and the empirical is the fact studies that we take up, that has to be deal with it and what actually is on the practical grounds is there. So we move from the norms and the values and the ideals to the impacts to the facts and the rational views. Then the next is ideographic to nomothetic. Ideographic as itself suggests the ideas, the ideals, one nation, and the individual studies. From individual studies to the nomothetic is universal studies. We are moving from universal studies. Like if we are comparing, then we are obviously following up some universal things that has can be commonly found in the different countries at one. Then next is non-ecology to ecology. What we are going to talk about, what we talk about here in comparative public administration is the ecological values, the importance of the environment, and what the environment we talk is administrative environment, how internal and external environment actually affecting the administration. Earlier, no, in the non-ecology, it was like the administration that functions only it keeps inside. It was isolated from the society. It was just work under the like under the black box. It just does the activities. It does not involve with the ecology or the environment. But now it is not like that. We have citizen participation, citizen awareness, then client orientations, and so on. Next slide. Objectives of comparative public administration. What objectives we actually talk about in comparative public administration? One of the aims is this: to build enlightened knowledge by changing the previous statements about public administration. The thing is, the traditional public administration was very cultural bound, but here we talk in the cross cultural ways. The exchange of values, the exchange of culture and norms, the exchange of practices. Public administration research should be expanded with development administration in mind. The nature of development administration will be determined by a precise comparative discussion of the administration in different countries. It was like, when we talk about this, we are like expansion of development administration. Like, development administration has also came around after the Second World War, when the countries have got independence and started development. Then only we have started this comparison of the countries. Okay, which country is developing at what level? So this is all the comparisons we talk about. One of the purpose of comparative public administration is to build a general management model, which administration or which public administration, which state has best administrative management models, how it is achieving to give its citizens the best among all. So we study the comparative analysis will be done on the ongoing problems of public administration. Like, we have so many problems in our country. There are also good things, but here, with this statement, I am talking about the problems in our country. And it is not like other countries do not have any issue, or maybe some countries have the same issue like we have. So we go on to see, compare how they are coping with it and how we are coping with it. Like, for say, I take an example of malaria. India has still not been out from the WHO in the malaria. But Sri Lanka, who is already waterbound from all the sides, and still it is free from malaria. So how Sri Lanka was able to cure this disease? So that is the point. So how that state, being having so much difficulty, it was able to make his country malaria free. But being in India, we are not able to do, though we have very less cases of malaria deaths, but still we are not able to say ki, okay, we are malaria free country. So this is the administrative parts, ki how they are dealing with it, how they have managed, how they have organized and processed their policies, and how implementation works there. The comparisons of problems we do. Another important objective is to search for theory by doing comparative research of public administration in different countries, and to put those theories into practice. For like, so many students are from economics, you might be knowing about performance budgeting, and then the PPBS budgeting and all. So performance budgeting was first implemented in USA. It was given by the Hoover Commission, and then the USA has implemented it. Then in India, there were committees that has been set up to adopt it in India, but still was not able to. Then there was some scholars called from USA to study that, okay, India has can adopt this performance budgeting or not. Then after that, still India was not satisfied, the government was not satisfied ki, okay, we can adopt this performance budgeting or not. So they have applied to some departments only. But when they got good results with that in those departments, then they have applied to the whole country the performance budgeting. So it is like this, how we compare the policies that has been adopted, the research we do with the other countries managing. And we can say in GST also, GST has been adopted in different countries. India has researched, India has studied, and then tried to follow it up. they the other countries got a success, and we are still trying to find that success in GST ki, okay, how we are lacking and what are the consequences we are facing with that. So that's all we study in comparatives, ki how an administration functions. These are the objectives: to study, to research, to apply those policies, etc. Next, characteristics of comparative public administration. This is a relatively new topic in public administration. Obviously, it has been a recent origin, and recently it has got a like renunciation that okay, this has to be studied and this has to be researched. The next is comparative public administration has a large number of contradictory discussions. Why contradictory discussions? Because as a separate subject we are studying here, but it has also can be studied under development administration. Then traditional public administration can also study it as a developed and underdeveloped public administration. So why it has to be a different subject? Why we have to go differently for this thing and do research and spend money and spend funds when we are already having scarcity of funds? So these all the contradictory discussions we get. The application of scientific method in the discussion of comparative public administration is particularly noteworthy. Since the Ford Foundation of United States contributed financially to its development, US researchers and administration experts dominated this particular discipline. Again, that I have already talked these things. Comparative public administration has been interested in theory building and moving toward the administrative problems of the developing state and its possible solutions. What we talk in comparative public administration, to find developing countries problems, solution for the problems, what all developing countries having the problems, how to solve them, and how we can find at least the alternatives, we can at least get better the situations. Apart from this, it makes students, teachers, researchers, experts aware of public administration of other states. Obviously, when we compare, we study. We get to know how USA is doing, how China is doing, how they are working good, how Africa is having lot of resources, still not able to grow well. So we study all these things. Next slide. Significance, importance, significance of comparative public administration, or how why comparative public administration has gotten importance in the domains of public administration, is probably one of the discussed and enriched topics in modern discussions of public administration. Why it is so much enriched? Because it has got all around the world universal values, and we get to study in public administration, we just study different specific topics. But in comparative public administration, we study different countries and different domains, their their entire public administration, how this is functioning, their political process, how that is affecting the administration. So it's very enriched topics we get to study in comparative public administration. Characteristics of administrative system of different states can be easily mastered through comparative public administration. So when we study comparative public administration, we make obviously tables, or we bifurcate them. Okay, China has this administrative system and these features, USA has these features, Japan has these features, Germany is having this much grade. So we got to study them very manageable, in a very manageable way and interesting way. Through public and comparative public administration, administrators, policymakers, researchers can understand the success and failures of administrative structures in different environments. The same example here also go in the performance budgeting. Why it got that much success in USA and why were India was fearing to adopt it in the earlier stage, and now India has adopted. The GST example, it's successful in Singapore, and here we are still finding out that it is a success or a failure in India. So this is all. Next slide. Okay. So guys, any
I have a question. May I please ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, ma'am, we talked about development administrations and how after World War II, international organizations came together to help the countries which got colonized. So, organizations like NATO and European Union, all these organizations would also be considered in development administration, or would they be considered in another administration?
Didn't really get your question. Your question is whether these organizations are part of development administration or not, right?
Yes, or would they be considered in comparative public administration, since in the end they compared and compiled in general, like if we take European Union, they picked up in general policies for their military or etc etc. So what would they be considered in?
So what I think is the comparative and public administration is like, so it has development also part of it. Like it chooses what to take, what not to take, to see which one is doing better, and to take those policies or those administrative services into them. So I think it's a part of development public administration. Garima.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Public administration, we talk about the developed and the developing countries' administrative systems, and this NATO and all. It was before the before the developing countries came as the criteria or the introductory. So that has come in under the development administration only.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Also, ma'am, second question. So, ma'am, after that, in the public administration, the evolution of public administration, we discussed about the 4 phases. Then we discussed about the 5 phases. So, those 4 phases were discarded, and then the 5 phases were introduced. Like, I did not get the concept of that 4 phases being discarded.
Actually, different scholars have given, like there are other two scholars also that they have also given the evolution stages. So that 4 stages that I have talked about, that was given by the Robert Glombesky. According to him, there are 4 stages, but when we study on the general basis, we take it as 5 stages. So I have there written also the logical sense that we actually talk and that we actually consider is this. But when somebody asks you, okay, that scholar Robert Glombesky, what stages or what evolution stages he talked about, then we go for those 4 stages. Anyways, the crux of both the stages were similar, if you have seen the dichotomy, then the identity, principles of administration, challenges and criticism, then crisis for identity, and then the new domain as public policy that is continuing even today. So the fifth stage has came around 1970s and it's still continuing.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Anybody else? So I think we can sum up our
Okay.
lecture here. Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See you all on Monday.
Next Monday.
Yeah. Bye. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye bye.